New tool day. Yeah, somehow I convinced Formlabs to send me all this stuff to test out, and I'm going to make the most of it. This video is only going to be about the hardware. In future videos, I'm going to get into the user experience and performance, but this one's just for my hardware nerds. Of course, I have projects in mind, but if you have any ideas, things you want me to try out, test out on such a large format SLA printer, please feel free to let me know. I wouldn't get any of this without you, so let the ideas fly. Now, I had nothing to do with design or development of any of this stuff, but there's already things I can see without even having turned anything on that I know were topics of conversation between engineering, program management, industrial design, and that's what I want to talk about today. Of course, thank you to Formlabs for sending me all this stuff, but I do want to point out that I have complete creative freedom and I can express my full, honest opinions about the product, good and bad. I would never accept any products or a sponsorship or anything without being able to do that. So let's get to it.
The 4L came on its own pallet and was overall very well packaged. I especially appreciate the lifting straps that come under the printer in the box. Nice touch and very needed. This thing is heavy. Starting at the front, we've got the door and the screen. Nice small panel gaps everywhere, very nice. The front door feels really nice to open, but there's a magnet that pulls it shut a little harder than I would prefer. Not a big deal, but it kind of slams. On the right side is the air inlet with the filter, and this is where you put in the resin cartridges.
And there's the lever that pushes on the bite valve and lets the resin flow out.
From Alec and Shane's teardown video, I know there's a load cell down there to weigh the cartridge and know how much resin is left.
Right now, the only option is to use two 1-liter resin cartridges. This is another thing that I'm sure was a huge topic of conversation at Formlabs, was the right size resin cartridge for the larger printer. Some kind of custom 5-liter resin cartridge would totally fit here, but I understand wanting to leverage the 1-liter resin load cells that they use to measure how much resin's left. I get wanting to leverage that, so I see both sides, but from my side, the 5-liter resin cartridge would have been really nice.
On the back is the power switch, power plug, Ethernet, USB-C, and Wi-Fi antenna port. There's also this removable cap that Formlabs will eventually sell some kind of fume extraction system for. And there's nothing on the left or top sides. Now we finally get to look inside. In the back here, we've got a very sturdy aluminum column with a 16mm ball screw and two 12mm linear rails. The ultrasonic resin level sensors back here, a light and camera. Tank latches, the mixer mount, and another light over here. In the back is this little toolkit with a 3D printed housing that you can use to service the printer if you ever need to. I'm really excited about the lights and the camera. I was never able to get very good footage from the Form 3 doing its thing. The build platform is so huge and heavy compared to the Form 3 that I'm used to, and the handles are much more organic and heavy duty than I expected. They're very well attached. This whole thing feels like a tank. You can see the datum surfaces machined here and here. You slide the T-shaped rail on the platform into the slot on the printer, and it registers really nicely in the back with a magnet. Then you close the latch, and it's rock solid. You can see this little disc here latches onto the build platform and gets pulled up when you close the latch, and that pulls the datum faces on the build platform against the ones on the printer.
Down in here is the LCD and optics that make the printer actually work. Not a lot I can show here other than the texture on the top of the LCD that prevents the tank membrane from suctioning onto it and tearing.
Now let's put the resin tank in. First, you remove the cover from the tank. Definitely keep this around so that you can keep junk out of your resin if you ever have to remove the tank. The tank slides in on these rails until you hit the back, and then you flip these latches up and in. You do have to push pretty hard on these, but it's obvious when they're home. These tiny raised spots on the mixer ride on these metal rails in the tank. Then you can click the mixer into place and then lock it. And now you can see where the resin from the bite valve goes. It comes in right here, right down onto this ledge and into the tank. And this hook up here is so that you can hang the build platform and let resin drain back into the tank when your print is done. Seems a little close to this edge here, and if your print uses the whole print platform, it wouldn't really fit, but I could see it being useful sometimes. As far as shelf space, the door needs at least 2.5 inches on the left of the printer to open 90 degrees and more if you need to open it further. You'll also need some clear space on the right to be able to insert resin cartridges or put a 5-liter tank and the resin pump. I received the Form Wash L, the Form Cure L, and a bunch of other supplies all in one big pallet. I don't have a pallet jack, so I just carried everything inside from there. Super solid packaging and cardboard lifting straps totally worked. I've always used this little magnetic mixer with IPA in the past, so I'm excited to see what a dedicated washing station will do for me. Nice silicone handle, two big props down there to circulate the solution. Now we can add this backplate, the basket, and the build plate adapter. There's multiple sets of slots here, so you can fit any of the smaller and past generation build plates as well, which is a really nice touch. There's a sensor down here that will monitor the concentration and let you know when it's time to change out your cleaning solution. I'm really looking forward to that because I use a lot of clear resin, so I can't even go by the color of the solution to tell whether it's well used up. The front panel opens up and you can see the rest of the tank, the rest of the concentration monitor wire, and in this cubby down here, there's a transfer pump, so you don't have to buy one or try to siphon the solution in and out of the tank. Pretty cool. On the back, there's the Wi-Fi antenna port, Ethernet, power, and USB style B like on a printer. But there are some odd panel gaps here and there. I can't really blame them. This is a big sheet metal door panel that has to match this edge here and then both radiuses at the ends. I'm sure they'll dial that in better future with the sheet metal supplier. Not a game changer either way. All right, let's look at the curing station. Initial impression is I really like the dedication to the angled block concept. Same kind of silicone handle as the wash station, big thick door, glass turntable with a geared center hub, 3 LED panels and reflective sides everywhere. I do like the light underneath the parts. I think that'll be pretty helpful. The one thing I don't really like is the super thick door. I didn't really mind it until I started designing the enclosure for this whole thing, and it means there has to be at least 7 inches of dead space to the left to even be able to open the door 90 degrees. There is a smart little trick here to deal with a big heavy door to make sure it lines up when it's closed. There's this plastic tapered section on the bottom of the door that rides up on this part so that it lands in its perfect position. Much better than trying to control it with super tight tolerances.
And there's power, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and USB on the back. Now, from an industrial design perspective, there's two things that have caught my eye on this whole product line. One is the door handles, and one is the front panel colors. So let's start with the front panel colors. The Wash L in dark gray, the Cure L in dark gray, and the 4L printer in silver. And now with the handles, we've got the Wash L with the blue silicone, the Cure L with the blue silicone, and the 4L printer with the black hard plastic. Now, my best guess is that these differences are to signify flagship product versus support product, but I have no inside information. Inquiring design nerds want to know. One last thing I almost forgot that I wanted to talk about is flathead screws. Without getting into the details of tolerancing for fixed fasteners, tolerancing for flathead screws is a literal nightmare. And as a result, you get screw heads that aren't quite centered in their countersinks. And I can tell this was an industrial design decision because if you look on the back of the equipment where they don't care as much, button head screws, baby. Engineering also gets props for keeping screws off of the customer facing sides of the equipment. Managing that kind of thing gets way less credit than it deserves. So that's all I've got for today. If you have any questions about anything I said or about the equipment, leave a comment and I'll get back to you. I'll put a link in the description for the product pages for all this stuff so you can get more detailed information. I'll also put a link for the video with Shane from Stuff Made Here and Alec from Formlabs where they tear down the Form 4. Highly recommend it. Lots of good information in there. And that's about it. So have a good one. I'll see you next time. It's a new tool day. New tool day. That's right. Somehow I convinced Formlabs. Yep. But if you do